no, now, Jew. Bitter at night. Oh, before an internet audience presented live.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Jupiter at Night. My name is Chris.
My name is Jeremy.
Well, hey there, J-Man.
Hi.
I'm excited because it's all about space tonight, so we've brought in our favorite space geek, Heather, also known as Mars Base in the chat room. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Hey, guys.
Hey there. So tonight we're talking about the epic that is 50 years of human space travel, and it's kind of a privilege to even be able to say that.
Yeah.
We get to be at the point in our civilization where we hit the 50 mark, and that's really exciting. And we've got a massive show planned, Mars, so thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Let's start off by talking a little bit about where it all began, because the man that went up into space first, we got to give this dude props.
Yeah.
The one and only Yuri
Gagarin.
You say his name again?
What?
Yuri Gagarin.
So he was a Russian, and he was the first dude up into space, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he became kind of a well-known...
dude, I just noticed one of the links you put in our show notes, a free YouTube video.
Yep.
That's an archival audio from his flight.
It's amazing. Yeah. I have a little bit of it here.
Over an hour of a movie. They took all the video footage from the space station following the path that he took. So they took it over parts of the Earth that he would have flown over and overlaid it with his original archival audio. So it's kind of a recreation as best they can do.
It's pretty interesting. It's not riveting, but it's already had 2.3 million views up on YouTube, and it's powerful in a way. It's powerful because it's just awe-inspiring to see what this guy what's been going through.
Dude, let me remind you about something. Yeah. That was 50 years ago.
I know.
Yeah.
We barely even had cars that worked well at that time, but we're throwing people into space.
Have you seen his little capsule that he had? I mean, he just had a very small window to just look out and enjoy.
Did we even have televisions? I don't even know.
I think so, right? I mean, how else are you going to brag about it unless you can televise it?
We didn't have an internet, though. So therefore, the rest of human existence might as well not have been there.
So what's some interesting information I got before the show? I don't know a lot about the first man into space, but I got a little tease before the show that he kind of had an interesting life.
Yeah, well, he was of that generation that all the people who were going into space, both the American astronauts and the Russian cosmonauts, they were all test pilots, so they were, military test pilots.
Best of the best kind of guys.
Best of the best, and in Russia...
Like Tom Cruise in Top Gun, right?
Yeah.
Sure. You mentioned the Soyuz capsule and how small small it was. That was actually part of the selection process. The first man in space was 5'2".
So you couldn't be big.
Oh.
No. That was part of the selection process. They had the best of the best, and who could do this, who could do that, who had the memory, who had the brains, and who could be small enough to fit in the capsule.
Well, you know what they say about guys with small feet? They go into space first.
Yeah, apparently. Exactly. Yeah. I have heard that just recently, actually. Didn't he also kind of have an interesting conclusion to his life? Like you said, he was sort of a kept.
Well, after he went into space, he was making the world tour. He this is Cold War, and he's still going to Europe and Britain and all these different places and ticker tape parading. And there was one parade where it was pouring down rain, and he was a tough guy. He refused to be in a covered vehicle. He refused an umbrella. He said, if they can stand out in the rain to see me, I can stand in the rain so they can see me.
Wow.
That is a true American hero. I mean, Russian hero,
yeah. But the Russian government didn't want anything to happen to him. They said, you know what, you can't go into space anymore. You can't be this great, you can't take all the risks. We need you alive.
You're too important to our national image.
I wonder how he felt about that. Are there any quotes or anything out there that you know of that maybe like a biography of his life that might say whether...
There might be. A lot of this stuff is, since 50 years have passed, a lot of this stuff is just sort of coming out of, the top secret files and stuff like that.
Something strikes me that if you're the kind of pilot who wants to be the first guy to go into space, there's a pretty good chance that you're not the kind of person who wants to be kept behind lock and key. So what happened? Did he on
the other hand, he might have been just a loyal statesman.
Didn't he have
along with it?
I asked you guys before the show. I said, how did he die? And you're like, oh, we're not going to tell you. We'll save it for the show. So you got to lay it on me because I've been dying to know since the pre-show how he died.
So just a little under 7 years after he went into space, he was on a training exercise, and something happened, and they lost control of the aircraft, and he and a training instructor went down. He didn't even live long enough to see man land on the moon.
Oh, that's too bad. So he was in a jet crash.
Yes.
Huh.
It wasn't even space related.
It says that he was provided with outdated weather information, and that by the time of his flight, the conditions had changed so dramatically, and they didn't have enough fuel and all kinds of things. Like, it was just a whole.
And there was a big Russian conspiracy about how he died and what happened, and then it was just.
There are people out there that believe that he might have been killed off for some reason.
Oh, I don't know. It was big celebrity gets killed off in training accident. Of course, there's going to be a lot of talk.
Yeah.
It does seem a little suspicious, but it sounds like it was just...
It sounds like it was just it looks like it was just a bad combination of events that, try to avoid this, lose control of the aircraft, and, bad things happen to test pilots.
Kind of coinciding with the 50th anniversary of manned spaceflight is also...
the 30th anniversary of the first space shuttle.
Yeah, and additionally, some information about what's going to happen to them, too. Do you want to start going through some of that information?
Sure.
Okay.
Now, it's kind of funny because the original launch date for the space shuttle was a few days before the anniversary. But, weather came up and this and that, and so they launched. The first space shuttle only launched with 2 people on board. Lasted just 2 days.
How many usually go up in more of the recent flights?
In most of the recent flights, it's 6 people. It's a crew of 6, sometimes 7.
And they don't have to be midgets anymore, right?
No. There are height limits. There's a top limit and a bottom limit. Just for safety reasons.
Right.
And they've had people towards the top of the limit before, and your spine kind of lengthens when you're in space. So and the person near the top of the limit was like, oh.
Which we covered on a previous episode of Jupiter at Night. If you'd like to check that out, you can find it on our site at jupiterbroadcasting.com.
Wow, nicely done, sir.
Thank you.
I'm compelled right now to go there.
Click the link.
Yeah, must not doing show. Now, I'm looking at, again, Mars Base always provides excellent show notes to accompany every episode that we do. And you have a couple of things in here, some highlights of the mission and some historical flights of the space shuttle. There's also, are we just kind of going to, do we want to just sort of...
I actually want to mention the Hubble real quick. I think that this is personally...
Are we going to skip over the disaster stuff? Do you want to just
I think we can.
Okay, all right.
I mean, we're talking about retiring the shuttles.
Yeah.
Some of them don't exist.
We know what's happened
anymore.
Yeah.
We don't want to dwell.
But definitely, I love the idea of talking about the Hubble. That's definitely one of the most historical things I think that comes to mind that the shuttle's done.
Especially for moving forward for space geeks of our generation, I think.
Yes.
So much is being discovered and finalized. What's the word I'm looking for? By the studies that they're using.
Yeah, there are a lot of
discoveries
and scientific, research going on.
Yeah.
A couple of years back when they talked about saying, is it safe enough to go back to the Hubble and give it another service repair mission?
Right.
At that time, for every slot that was available, there were still 3 or 4 people competing for each slot on the Hubble. So, I mean, it's still extremely used. There's still, every slot is filled, and there's still competition for every slot available.
When you say slot, you mean like access for scientists to use its resources kind of a thing? Like people sign up and they get a slot?
Well,
you
point,
have to you have to fill out a report saying, this is what I want to look at, this is what I'm going to be researching, and so they'll kind of fit them all together so the telescope's not bouncing all over the place. It kind of follows a predetermined, path.
Oh, sure.
Well, at this point in our lives as wanting to explore space, the Hubble is almost the only way to do it. I mean, there are other observatories and stuff like that, but for really deep space looking.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's because you don't have to look through the atmosphere.
Right.
Without the Earth's atmosphere, you can get a lot clearer images, and you can do all this other scientific stuff. And there are space telescopes coming up in the future that in the infrared or the X-ray. But the Hubble is so good about public outreach because it has those stunning visual images. Right. People can look at that and go, "That's a Hubble image. That's awesome. Space is cool."
I've got a computer render here of which is one of the things that I thought was great about the shuttle design was its cargo capacity. Here's a render of the shuttle deploying supposedly the Hubble Space Telescope just right out of its back cargo area. That kind of seems to me like a huge functionality that we're not going to have anymore.
Yeah. Well, the Russians do have a space shuttle.
And we're going to work with them now.
Well, and also is it Japanese are launching their space program soon? And
yeah.
I mean,
I don't know any details on it.
But being launched and being worked on. But the Russians do have something that's working right now, and it's pretty much the shuttle with a little, artistic flair here.
That kind of leads me to talking about the next big milestone from our shuttle journeys of the past is the International Space Station.
Yes.
Have there been any discussions about how long this plans to remain in operation? Are other space programs just going to basically take it over when they go up and keep it operational as long as possible?
Yeah, the Russians and other countries can do resupply missions, and there's always the talk of when do we deorbit it? It's safe deorbiting so that it goes into the ocean and it burns up over not populated areas. It's always a kind of a balance of keep sending stuff, keep preparing stuff, and when does it not become
viable?
Viable, and was not worth it, and when you need to start thinking about doing something else.
So you'd mentioned that the Russian space program kind of has a shuttle that they can do cargo hauling and things like that.
Yes.
One of the first things when I search for Hubble, or when I search for the International Space Station, is a shot of our space shuttle bringing supplies to the International Space Station. So again, even just supplying that seems like now we're going to be reliant on another country. Now that's not, I guess, that's a normal thing these days, I guess, but it still seems like a big piece of functionality that the U.S. isn't going to be able to provide directly for ourselves now.
Yeah, and we'll have to pay for each seat, for each astronaut. We have to pay the Russians for each trip up. I think it's 58 or 63 million, something along that, for each seat.
Oh, so it's cheap.
Oh,
I got that.
Hey guys, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go catch a space flight. See? Oh no, Mark Shuttleworth did it of Ubuntu. So
we're talking about the end of our space program, basically, and I don't want to dwell too much. Looking back, though, even if all we have to show for it for years to come is the Hubble and the International Space Station,
we've got more, but
some junk that we left on the moon.
We've got definitely some memorable stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot of satellite stuff, but the space station and the Hubble are the two iconic things. That,
definitely.
I call that a win. I do. Yeah. I call it a win.
So what's happening now with the shuttle?
Well, the shuttle program in itself has been kind of rolling, ramping down. There's been, all sorts of various artifacts are being sent out to museums and universities and schools, and teachers, can apply and, pay $24 shipping and get a shuttle tile that has been flown in space for their school.
Oh,
that's kind of cool.
I'd like to have one here in the studio.
Do you have to have a teaching license? Because I'd like one.
I'd like one right here on the set.
Yeah, it has to be an accredited school, and you have to fill out all sorts of various paperwork to prove that you're a school, and that you have to sign paperwork saying you'll keep it on campus.
Dear Jupiter Broadcasting audience, if you buy one and send us to us, we'll pay you back.
No, we just need to start the College of Jupiter Broadcasting, or Jupiter Broadcasting University. JBU. How about that, right? JBU, and then wait, can I fill this stuff out online, or do I got to write paperwork up? Because if I got to write something,
I bet it's paperwork up, and you have to give it to the government, signing, saying that you've told the truth.
I don't like either of those things.
All right, let's move on. Let's get back to the shuttles.
Okay. Can I go see them now? So what's going on there? Are we going to make it so that I can go actually visit the shuttle and check it out?
Stuff that's being handed out are the shuttles themselves. They announced just yesterday.
There's 4 that remain, right?
Yes, there's 4.
And they're slotting them out to different universities or different museums, or what? What's going on?
Various museums. They had to any institution had to be for educational purposes. That had paid $28.8 roughly $1 million to pay for. That's paying for the ferrying. That's NASA has a modified Boeing 747 aircraft that they ship it from California to Florida.
Those are shuttles, don't they fly? No, I'm kidding.
Har. We're looking at some concept
there's all
images.
Sorts of hazardous materials on the shuttles and various things that they have to strip out. Flight hardware and things like that they have to strip out. So it's paying for getting it ready for a museum to display it and shipping it to them. They had to prove that they would have it for educational purposes, that they would have it in an indoor, climate-controlled enclosure, that they'd have funds for the ongoing care and upkeep. And they said that they wanted to have, some sort of historic connection to the Space Shuttle program, near wherever institution it actually got.
It looks like the list that you've given me, are these all confirmed?
Yes.
Because I can go ahead and list a few of these. If you're in these areas, we would love to see pictures of these actually on display once those are finalized. So
yeah, because the images we were just showing were just concept stage images.
Yeah, so the Shuttle Discovery will end up at the Smithsonian in Virginia, the National Air and Space Museum. The Atlantis is going to end up at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. That's appropriate. The Endeavour will end up in L.A., California, at the California Science Center. And the prototype of the Shuttle Enterprise, which is the one that I want to see, is going to be in New York, New York, at the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum.
Awesome. Yeah. I want to see all of them, actually.
Let's go on a world tour of the shuttle.
Let's go do a Jupiter night in front of the space shuttle.
One on the West Coast.
Yeah. I can make it down to L.A., and then I have a great excuse to go to New York.
Yeah, but that's just the Endeavor. You want to see the Enterprise.
I want to. Well, yeah, that's why I said go to New York, too.
Oh, okay.
I want to see them both. It's just the L.A. one's close enough. I'd like to see Discovery, too.
Yeah.
I bet, I was just looking back, and, I could see these museums being like a family destination. I'm actually not too upset. Like, I am bummed that we're losing the space shuttles big time, but at the same time, they are now almost reaching an accessibility level to me that never would have been there before.
Right.
That's kind of exciting in a whole other way.
Mars, do you happen to know, are any of these exhibits going to allow people to actually tour the insides? Even maybe just a replica?
I believe, I'm trying to remember which renditions had them allowing visitors to come up close and personal to them.
That would be so cool.
There was once, we have the Seattle Pacific Science Center up here, and they toured through a replica of the Soyuz shuttle capsule that you could get inside. The kids could get inside. Mm-hmm. Only kids, because remember he was tiny.
Yeah, a little dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was awesome as a little kid to be able to climb into a replica of the Soyuz. So
was it a mess? I was looking at pictures online. It just looked like it was a disaster in there.
Well, it was a replica, so I don't remember really. Yeah. Plus, I was like,
there are various replicas in museums. I know the Johnson Space Center, the Visitor Center at Houston, has a replica that you can kind of walk into.
Huh,
so you see like the nose section sticking out of a wall, and you can climb up a set of stairs and kind of walk around and kind of look.
That'd just be cool.
Now,
I agree with you, though. Even though we don't have spaceflight anymore, the fact that these are being retired where we can visit them makes it so that now people that could never have gone on the shuttles before may be able to see them and touch them and say hi.
Mars, do you know anything about future space shuttle replacements that we're working on? Is that funded, or is it? I know it's been in planning stages. Is there anything?
Yeah, there's a lot of various planning stages. Some of the funding to various projects has been cut or removed in the last year or so. So it's kind of everything's kind of up in the air. And right now we're talking more robotic missions.
But if we make the robots smart enough to go into space, next thing you know, they're going to turn on us.
I
that's
think
just a downhill spiral.
I think that's a great argument for we've gotten some people that have written us and said, well, have you guys thought about the fact that just space travel is extremely expensive and that maybe we shouldn't even be bothering with it? And I think the J-Man just made a great argument for why manned spaceflight is important.
Yes.
Because if we send an army of robots out there and they turn on us, then when we go out there,
hello, BSG,
we're going to use this place up, and then we're going to go out into space, and they're going to hate us.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Mars. Mars, any other items you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
I have a random space shuttle story.
Oh, lay it on us.
This is about the little guy. They're coming around talking to contractors.
Every worker is important.
Every worker is important.
Yeah.
Talking about, there was a man, close to the end of his retirement, and he's showing the new guy around, and it's like, he had to plug these cords in, and he went to plug it in, and it just didn't feel right. He went to plug it in, just didn't feel right. He's like, you know what? I can't sign off on this. Whole shuttle mission means it's going to be scrubbed if he doesn't sign off on this. It's going to be cut off a couple days.
Wow.
He's like, you know what? I just can't sign off on it. And so they go along and they look, and the plug was not correct. It was like, it was machined incorrectly. So they track it down to the little machine shop, and, and they're taking the tour, and, one machine at a time is pumping them out, and it's perfect every time. And, intern's kind of wandering around and looks in a trash can. It's like, hey, this looks like the failed part. It was one of those things where it was like hydraulics, when so many of the machines hit off all at once, which only happened every once in a while. Then it would get misprinted.
Wow.
Just because of like resonance in the area and everything?
Well, because it wouldn't have enough pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Pressure in the line had to be to a certain extent. And every once in a while, enough machines would hit off at the same time that the pressure wasn't high enough to cut it out properly.
That's government efficiency for you. That's it right there.
Now, do you know how important that part was?
Would it have blown up?
It would have been mission critical. Something very bad would have happened.
Oh,
wow.
Well, I'm glad that guy was a stickler for how it felt in the plug then.
Well, that's how...
Usually what I do is I just try harder when something doesn't plug in quick.
Yeah, or wrap it in duct tape or something.
Yeah.
Chewing gum, right?
Well, when that kind of thing happens, every single person is like, it wasn't just the astronauts. It's a lot of other people who were involved in this program and who have, their hearts and their souls and their jobs.
People on the ground, yep.
In this program that, made sure that those 7 people that got FaceTime went into space and we're okay.
That's kind of an interesting angle. It's kind of a Debbie Downer point, but there's a lot of jobs that are involved in the space shuttle program.
Yes,
that
there are.
aren't anymore.
Yeah, but hopefully, and I don't want to kind of wrap up on a Debbie Downer point, because I think if you look at the fact that these are now accessible by us in the museums, and you've got to believe that eventually, either through a development of our own programs, we'll create some sort of replacement, or by working with other countries, which only strengthens our relationships with those countries, which is also a good thing.
Yep.
I mean, maybe by traveling through space, we'll actually improve the bonds with other nations, and maybe one day we can actually, through the travel of space and exploration,
such a hippie, dude.
Maybe we'll come together as a people. You never know.
That actually brings up something,
a good turning point.
Maybe on a future show, Mars, if you have interest in this, I would actually like to maybe discuss the Virgin Atlantic private corporate funded space flight at some point.
Yeah, right? The private,
Until such a show rolls around, I think that's about it for wrapping this one. I do want to point people to our show notes. They're great as always. Thanks, Mars, for assembling those for us.
Absolutely.
Also includes a bunch of like Twitter feeds if you want to follow folks, the shuttles as they tour around, and NASA and space.com, and just great stuff. Yeah. Check it out right down there.
Absolutely. All right, Mars Base. Well, thanks for joining us again for another awesome space episode.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to tonight's episode of Jupiter at Night. Now, Thursday's our last episode for this week, so you're going to want to be sure to tune in live over at jblive.tv. And if you're watching us on the live stream right now, be sure to stick around. We've got a great faux show coming up. That's the post show after this. And then the J-Man's got another show coming up after this. So live
I always hang out after these shows. I just hang out and we have some good fun times.
I'll give you a hint when there's some games coming out. Even if you don't hit us when we're live for this show, if you tune in afterwards, sometimes you catch the J-Man playing one of the latest games on the live stream and chatting with folks. So that's always kind of fun.
Occasionally even pre-release if I've got the hook.
Don't tell them that. We might get in trouble. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to tonight's episode of Jupiter at Night, and we'll see you tomorrow night.